Alrighty, so this is a yoga philosophy video, and honestly, I really don't know how it's going to go. I haven't fully planned out what I'm going to say. I just know generally the topic. So we're going to talk about a fundamental aspect of yoga, which is the yoga in the Yoga Sutras, which are the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The Yoga Sutras are a list, I think of them as a list of instructions for what is yoga. It defines yoga and it tells you what to do. And they're thousands of years old, and they're in classical Sanskrit. And it's the kind of thing that at that time, I assume it was passed on as an oral tradition. They memorized them, they chanted them. And so now what I think about them as is like a presentation. So if you think about in a presentation, you get bullets, and then sometimes in your list of topics, there's subcategories. So when you're reading the Yoga Sutras, these items, there's 196 of these little items. Some of them are main topics, and then under them are subcategories. And in the Wilmington University class that I teach, so far this term, we've talked about some of the Yoga Sutras. And the first Yoga Sutra it's Atha Yoga Nushasanam. And it means now instruction of yoga. All right, so we're going to learn about yoga. And then the second sutra is Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And I'm sure my pronunciation isn't that great, but I'm doing the best I can. And this one is about what is yoga, basically. What are we doing? So in yoga, we're finding stillness in the mind. And so the chitta is the field of the mind. It's all the stuff. And then vritti is the activity of it. And I think of it as a lot of activity. That's how my mind is. And then nirodha is the cessation or stopping. So we've got this mind that's with us all the time, and it's got a lot of activity, and we are learning how to still that. And when I think about my own life, I think I've been very fortunate. I have a lot of gratitude, but with every life, there's hardship, there's difficulties. And so we're all going to, through the process of being alive, experience those difficulties, those hardships. And so the yoga practice, I think, was about being able to figure out, how do you navigate that? How do you get through those times? And they're going to arise. And then when you have that, suddenly you can become very overwhelmed. Some people shut down. Some people have mental health problems. And how are we going to continue to live even when we're having challenges and hardship? And so the Yoga Sutra that I had wanted to talk about in lecture at WMU this past week, and I wasn't able to because I had a hardship, and we had to cancel the lecture, and I'll talk about that maybe in a second, but was Yoga Sutra 1.12. And this one is Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. So if you remember, Nirodha was the stillness, the cessation. So how are we going to find that? So we're going to find it through two things: Abhyasa and Vairagya. And Abhyasa is defined in some different ways. So I'm going to talk about that in a bit. So Abhyasa is practice. And in this book that I'm using right now, which is a workbook by V.S. Houston, okay, but I have like 12 different, at least, translations of the Yoga Sutras. Abhyasa, he says, vigilance of awareness. All right. And I don't think of it as that, although it is. Okay. But I think of it as the work that I have to do, whatever it is I have to do. I just think of it as that. So this is my duty. That's how I think of it. So I think I have work that has to get done. I have practice. That's my life. How am I going to maintain that when, if my mind isn't still, if I can't get my mind to still, how am I going to do it? Right. So that's the practice. Okay. And he says vigilance of awareness, which is as if you're practicing staying on task. So he looks at it that way. So he's saying that you're going to show up and do the work, and you're just going to keep returning. When your mind comes off of what you're doing, it starts to be distracted, you're going to practice returning it to the thing. So that's the abhyasa. So he's talking about it as if it's a practice. Our yoga is our practice, right? The physical practice. So we call it a practice. So abhyasa, right? We're going to show up and do the work, and don't let ourselves become overwhelmed or off task. And as a person with ADHD, I can say that this is very helpful. So it's the idea that we need to continually practice, staying on task and doing our work. All right. So then the second piece is vairagya, and it's non-attachment is how he defines it here. And what that is it's the part where you have to let go of the distraction. All right. So the practice is returning to the focus, the task. And then the vairagya is the letting go of the thing that you weren't supposed to be doing. And this is very difficult. And I think I have to assume it's difficult for everyone. And I think during times of really great hardship, it's difficult, right? We have to return to our. Now, I will say that there are times I think when people can become so single-minded that their focus, their practice, their vigilance isn't allowing them to recognize that the task they're doing isn't the one they're supposed to be doing. All right. So I think there's an element of this with telling you vigilance of awareness. It's not just keep doing what you think you're supposed to be doing. It's really pay attention. Is that what you're supposed to be doing? Right. And, make sure, and then let go, right, of whatever's preventing you or whatever from accomplishing the task. So there are times when you have to go from what you thought you were going to be doing to what you are going to be doing. It's something different. And that happens, I think, a lot. So what happened to me this week in lecture was that I was really excited about the lecture. We were doing a physical practice, then we were going to get to the lecture and do a discussion. And then we were going to do another physical practice. And I was so excited about class. And then I get this alert on my phone, which was an SOS alert that my father got in a car accident. And he had gotten in a car accident and he was in the emergency room. So he's okay. He's got a fractured sternum from his airbag, and I'm going to pick him up this afternoon and help him. I'm going to stay with him and help him at home. So anyway, he was in the hospital for 2 days. It'll be 2 days. Just observing him. And he is in his 80s. So, and he does have some osteoporosis. So, it's something to worry about, and a heart condition. So anyway, that was me having to go from my focus and my vigilance to do my class and my non-attachment to any distractions that arose, and addressing it and changing the direction, and then being on that and not letting my emotions about what was happening with my dad take over. And, I have had plenty of opportunities in the past 2 days to have a good cry, and I have. But I'm trying not to do that when he's around because I want to be very supportive. So I haven't been doing that, with him, obviously. And then I'm preparing the house right now to get him and to help him. And I'm also doing this video. Okay, so what is this all this stuff? Like, it seems like it's too simple and it's not enough. All right. And it isn't, right? There's 196 of these. This is just one of them. So what is it? What's happening with it? Okay, so there's a concept that I wanted to go over that is get it right, get it wrong. All right, so what the Yoga Sutras are doing is they're giving us, to some degree, a framework that we can use to live in life and accomplish the things that we would like to accomplish and be as much at peace as we can, right? To manage the stuff and be successful, all right? And that framework, these little lines, 196, they can be called aphorisms. And I had to laugh because I have a frustration with Jordan Peterson that I'm going to bring up right now. Okay. So Jordan Peterson, if you know who he is, okay, he talks about axiomatic presuppositions, right? And he uses these really big words that almost seem like they mean the same thing. And whenever he says that, it's in a lot of his lectures. I'm always kind of frustrated a little bit with it because an axiom, I'm just going to look up the definition right now, is a statement accepted as true or as the basis for an argument. All right, so I'm going to write that down for myself. So an axiom is a statement accepted as true, and it's your basis. So it's your basis. And in his case, he's thinking of it as a basis for life, right? And then a presupposition means almost the same thing to me, okay? So I always think it's kind of pompous for him to use those words. That's what I think. So presupposition is a thing tacitly assumed beforehand at the beginning of a line of argument or a course of action. So this is assumed. All right. So when he says axiomatic presuppositions, he's saying that you're making some assumptions about the basis for what is your reality. All right. So he's saying that you're making assumptions. You have them built in. You have assumptions built in that are the basis of your reality. And so what he's doing when he does a lot of his talks is sometimes he challenges them. So he says, okay, well, are the bases of your reality true? All right. So, and the Yoga Sutras are a framework you can use as a basis. All right. But it's not enough. Like, in order to live your life, you have all your life's experiences and your family and your community and your faith system. And from all of that, you've created a framework that's your axiomatic presupposition. So I'm just going to call it your framework, your beliefs, how you live. Right. So you've created this thing. It's a creation. And then when you run up against challenges, sometimes that framework is a source of your stress. All right. So sometimes it can be a source of the stress because you've forgotten that you made the framework. And so there are times when the framework doesn't work. Okay. It just doesn't always work because how could it? Life is way too complex. Right. So, okay. So what we want to do is we want to be on top of that. We want to be looking at that. What do I have some kind of belief that I'm imposing on myself that's causing me to be so stressed that I can't function, right? And so it's a form, it's in yoga, we call that svadhyaya, which is self-study, right? So we call it svadhyaya. And we talked about that when we did I think it's a niyama. So, so the niyama, the things that you do that have to do with you, how to take care of you. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is think about one of these presuppositions, one of these frameworks That's everybody has. We all have it. All right. We were raised with it. It's just something we have. And we need it. I think we need it to stay alive. I think it's a helpful framework. All right. But it can be harmful too. All right. So the framework is the get it right, get it wrong model. All right. And what that is it's about how there's an opposite or like a universal truth of opposites. It's this idea that if you're not good, you're bad. If it's not up, it's down. If you're, not popular, no one likes you. It's a black and white kind of way of applying things. And what happens when we get stuck in this is it's not true, right? The idea that if you're not good, you're bad. If you're not the best, you're the worst, right? If you're not smart, you're stupid, right? This idea, if you're not pretty or ugly, right? Is harmful because it isn't true. It isn't true that if you're not the most beautiful person, that you're ugly, right? It's just a system that we use to help us to have a direction to go, right? Like we want to go towards the ideal, right? So we have these ideals, we want to go towards them, but we forget they're an ideal. And then we get locked up. If we're not as pretty as this person, we're ugly, right? Or if we're not as smart, or we get a bad test grade, now we're dumb, right? We get a good test grade, we're smart. We get a bad test grade, we're dumb, right? Whatever it is. And this is the get it right, get it wrong model. And the Yoga Sutras are asking you to step outside of that system and say, it's not get it right, get it wrong. It's not that. It's do the work, practice. If you get off task, go back on task. Choose what you pay attention to what you're supposed to be doing. And then let go of the get it right, get it wrong. Let go of it. So it's going to arise, and then you have to let it go. You might take you a little bit to let it go. You have techniques or whatever, you practice letting it go. So practice letting it go. Practice, let it go. Practice. It's like that. And so even though it seems like it's too simple, it can't be helpful, or it seems like it's too impossible, you might have both, right? That's get it right, get it wrong again. Is it too simple? It's not worth paying attention to. Or is it impossible? It's not worth paying attention to, right? So what it is it's this awareness that what we need to do to get through our life is to show up to do our work, focus on what needs to be done, be paying attention, be thinking about it, do our self-study, yeah, all that, and let go as much as we can, as soon as we can, of the things that we're getting caught up in. And usually those things are the things that we've talked about in class that are categorized in the Yoga Sutras as avidya. So if you remember that sutra, I have to find that sutra. I did not plan. I told you I did not plan. So I don't even remember which one it is. So the avidya are the barriers to clear thinking, to being able to see reality and see the truth and things like that. And what they are they're your ego and their cravings, and then their that's desires, and then their aversions, and then there's fear of death. And there's probably, my imagination is there's other ways you could not see things clearly. But if you just look at those four, when you're studying, when you're freaking out, and you think, what's going on with you? What's going on with me, right? And you could journal it, right? So you could say, whoa, what's my ego want right now? And what am I craving? What am I desiring? And then what don't I want? What do I want to get away from? And then what are my fears, right? And often it's fear of death, but maybe there's a little more complexity or subtlety there. So you can open it up to any kind of fear. And so I didn't find which sutra it was. I can't remember. Like I said, I didn't prepare, but I should have. But anyhow, the thing that I was just trying to get to with that is that we want to be able to figure out how to practice non-attachment. It's not detachment. It's not like you don't care about anything. It's not that. It's that you want to be able to say, why am I so wrapped up in this? And get that like little bit of distance so that you can figure it out. So you can at least be calm enough to like work on it, right? So what I have wanted to do for an exercise in class that we didn't get to because of my own thing was to talk about change. So yoga, if you remember in the textbook at the very beginning of class, so our textbook is the Heart of Yoga by TKV Desikachar. And right in the very beginning, we talked about yoga. What is yoga? And the first chapter is about that. And I highlighted some things in the book that I thought were very helpful. And so, people define yoga all the time. There's lots of ways to define it. One of the things the author says is to attain what was previously unattainable. Another thing he says, which I really like, is to be one with the divine. But he also says, I really like this, every change is yoga. And so I'm kind of trying to tie the threads together of this little philosophy conversation. So change itself is really unpleasant, actually. I think most people will agree, but some people might not really be aware of how unpleasant change is. So you can want change and you can change. And then some people are even experience change when they don't want it. They can even make it happen when they don't. All right. But most people don't like it. And I'm going to go so far as to say, I don't think anyone does. So it says every change is yoga. So we're looking for making the needed transformations, the ones that we would like to have, through the effort and the non-attachment. And we're doing it to experience our best life or a better life, or however you want to think about that. And the yoga physical practice itself is helpful with that, right? It's you learn to apply those things that I went over in your physical practice, because the physical practice is challenging, and achieving change in the body physically is very similar to mental change. And so you can learn the tools of physical change, and you can use those tools for mental change as well. And so the idea that you can change, I'm going to go so far as to say no one likes it. No one likes it. I think it's helpful if you want the thing you're trying to change to, right? You want to say, this is the thing I want. You want to keep that in your mind as your goal that you're headed. And then you want to do the yoga practice specifically from the sutras of, really practicing the thing you want and letting go of the distractions. And sometimes the thing you want, trying to work on that, the practice itself is a distraction. So what happens is your mind creates thoughts that are in the get it wrong, get it right model. And those thoughts are things like, I'm not good enough. I can't keep all the things the yoga teacher says in her head. I can't remember them all. Or I'm not doing the pose right. Or it doesn't feel like how she described it. Or I'm just not very good at this. Or, whatever it is, it's like those words that are in your head are the get it right, get it wrong model, right? It's that other framework. So you're trying to step out of that. So you're trying to let them go. So they're the thing that you need to let go of to stay on task. So it's not, don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Because everybody does it. Because we were all raised in the get it right, get it wrong model. And it does have value. Okay, it does, right? The value is that it allows you to know where you're headed. right? It gives you some ideas about where you'd like to go, right? You don't want to be on the bad side, you want to be on the good side. But at the same time, it's helpful to remember that it isn't actually real, that we created that so that we know what to do, how we know where to go, we know what to do in our life. Okay, so that was my philosophy lecture, and you can let me know if you have any questions. And I'm going to post it on YouTube, and then I'll put it in the Wilmington University materials too.